My name's Dorsey Atkinson. I'm the pastor here at LifeSpring Church, and I am glad that you chose to be here today. Are you glad that you're here today? Yes. Fantastic. I want you to stay excited the whole day because I want to be excited the whole day. Over the last several weeks, we began a message series that's called I Want My Life Back. And this whole message series is revolved around the premise of that a lot of our lives are being robbed because of debt and financial burdens. Anybody here have a problem with finances and are not afraid to go amen or shout out? Is anybody afraid to do that? Anybody got problems with finances? Yes. Okay, amen, whatever. I'm trying to coax some stuff out of here. I don't know. Maybe I need to hold a baby up here to get y'all fired up here. But my point is that there's a lot of us that are burdened down by the difficulties of our finances from choices in the past, choices in the present, choices in the future. I don't know what it is, but we're burdened down with our finances. They've caused us so much issues in our life. And I wanted to speak to that. In fact, last week I spoke to it, or 2 weeks ago I spoke to it, and talked about that we believe that the biblical model is that we want to be able to give generously to the church. We believe that we want to be able to save money for the rainy day or something out in the future. And we want to be able to have money to be able to be generous to others when those situations or those chances happen that we could help somebody out. And for many of us, we can't give to the church, or we don't give to the church, or we aren't able to put anything back to savings, or we aren't able to be generous to others because of this burden called debt. We owe so many people, owe so much to so few people. It could not be, you could just owe a whole lot to one person, or you could owe a lot to a lot of people. I don't know how you are. I spread it out. I owe everybody. You know what I'm saying? I just owe them all. I owe. It's off to work I go. So what we're talking about in the last couple of weeks, or last week that I was here, is that we talked about how it's important to have a plan and have a goal of what we're trying to do. And we said, well, what would happen if you aren't giving anything to the church? Say you're giving nothing. Or maybe you don't have anything in your savings. Or maybe you don't have anything that's put back to be generous to others. What would happen if you just start taking one step to trying to do stuff to put some money in each of those categories? Or what if you took some of the money that you could save or some of the things to reduce the debt in your life, pay the debt off so you could start giving to the church, so you could start putting some stuff back for a rainy day, so you could start having money that you'd be able to be generous with. Jody and I traveled to Tennessee this last week and went up for a conference and done a couple things. And one of the things that we were convicted about after I spoke was that we decided we're not going to drink any soft drinks, which we don't really drink soft drinks, but we're not going to drink any tea, which is hard to live in the South and not drink tea. Okay? That's just the way, it's hard. And they charge $2 for that stuff. Sometimes $2.25. In Tennessee, they charge a whole lot more at some of the restaurants we went in. So what we did was we decided that we wouldn't drink tea, we'd just drink water. And so we squirreled back that money. We kept that money back, and we saved up some money over the course of the number of meals that we're going to put toward our debt. And we're going to put some toward our generosity. We're going to put some toward our offerings, which we're already doing offerings, but we're going to put a little bit more to that and put some toward our savings. Now, that might not seem like much, but 5 or 6 meals at $4 per $2 each, $4 for the couple, adds up to be a lot after a while. In fact, there was one day we were at a conference, and they had a breakout session, and they had Chick-fil-A sandwiches. We got a free meal that day. You with me? And I'm like, yes, that's so good. And then they had leftover sandwiches. And they said, y'all take those home. We're going to have to throw them away. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't have to throw them away if old Dorsey around here. Because we got a microwave and a refrigerator in our hotel room. I took 4 of those things, 1 for Jody and 3 for Dorsey. Now, one of them I ate for breakfast the next day. Now, I will say that. But my point is we saved money on that, and we put that back toward doing those things. But the thing that I want to talk to you about today is that the truth of the matter is that debt or owing or being in debt is like being a slave. You can't do what you want to do because your slave master is your debt. There's been times that people have approached you, I'm sure, that you wanted to be generous, but you didn't have anything to be generous with. You were living off the generosity of others. But you couldn't help, or you couldn't give anything to anybody because you weren't able to do that. You couldn't put anything back for savings, even though you heard this great talk or whatever. You just couldn't figure out how to do it because you had to make the payments, or they're going to take your truck, they're going to take your car, they're going to take your house, they're going to come and do something to you. It's going to hurt your credit ratings or whatever the story is. So we become a slave to this debt, to this bondage of debt. And one of the last things I said before I closed out the week earlier was that being a slave to financial turmoil and to debt does not honor God. Being a slave to financial turmoil and to debt does not honor God. And so we want to free ourselves from this slavery. And so we say to ourselves, one day, it'll be like this. One day, I'm going to have it all together. One day, I'm going to pay off all these student loans. I'm going to pay off this house. I'm going to pay off these cars. I'm going to pay off these credit cards. One day, I'm going to have enough money I can pay cash. One day, I'm not going to have to worry about things. One day, what would that one day look like to you? Why don't you start dreaming about that? What would one day look like that to you? Coming out of college with no debt and a savings account, and you're giving offerings to church, and you're being generous. One day going to work and not worried about all the difficulty things of because you've got everything paid up. You're going to work because you enjoy to work and you enjoy doing these things. What is one day? How happy would you be? Would anybody shout? Who would shout? Who would shout if you had one day? What would it sound like, Preston, if you shouted? Hooray! Hooray! What else? Anybody else? Would you shout? Nobody else? Woo! Y'all obviously ain't in deep a debt as I am. Because I'm telling you, I'm going, woo! I'm out of debt, man. You come up. I'm not going to turn my head from people who want something. You understand? You see them coming up to you, and they're like wanting something, and you're like, oh, no, I'm going the other way. You know who you are because you're just like me. You pull off on the side of the interstate, and they're sitting there having a hungry. You understand what I'm saying? They got the little sign over there, and you try not to make eye contact. You're like, please let the yield sign go so I can get on through. Let me get on through, and then it's like you're stuck. And they're standing there, and they're looking at you. We've all been there. And we couldn't help. We couldn't do anything. What happens if one day was to be today? One of the things I'm doing now is I'm reading a book on the power of habit, why we do what we do. And the research on habits tells a couple of things. Research on the habits that we have say that there's a trigger that triggers us to doing certain things that we do. And that this trigger causes us to have a desired result that we want. So we take an action between whatever happens in the trigger and whatever happens to the result we want. And so when we do that, we feel better. Now, unfortunately, the greatest example of this is Alcoholics Anonymous has this pattern or this thing down of how to change habits. Nikki works with people with anger management issues, and there's things that you can do to change habits. Here's what life has told us. There's always going to be triggers, and you're always going to want to be somewhere else. It's the action that's the issue. And so an alcoholic, when things happen and it's just stress, when I'm just using an example, it doesn't mean every alcoholic, but it's just an illustration. That stress or stuff comes up in my life that I don't want to deal with. So what I don't want to think about it. I want to forget about it. So what do? I want to be over here where I don't think about it, where the results are, everything's good. So between here and there, what I do, I drink. Okay? That's the action I take to get to here. But what if there's an action you can take to get here where you don't think about it? You don't worry about it, you're not concerned with it, that a trigger happens, but it doesn't freak you out. For some of us, it's not alcohol. For some of us, it's eating. Anybody understand what I'm talking about, eating? It's one of those things that when it's triggered, we feel bad, we feel stressed, we feel like stuff is going on. And so we eat, and we go over here and we eat because we want that rush from that chocolates do it really well for me. That sugar rush, you know what I'm saying? You just really don't care about anything. It's like a little baby after when you feed a baby, you ever fed a baby? And they drink that milk, and they just go in that milk coma. They just sort of, hey, everything's cool, man. You know, it's like, hey, yeah, that's me. You give me, let it stress me out. Give me a Snickers bar, a Hershey's bar or something, man, I'm good. And is it, you with me? But that's not necessarily a healthy action, but it gets me the results. So if we can't get rid of the triggers, and we're going to always want to be at a better place, what do? We have to change the actions that we do. I can't get rid of the triggers in your life. No one is going to get rid of the stresses or the things that could cause stress in your life. But we can't adjust how we react to those things to get the results that we want. Now, research has shown not only do you have to have these three things of a trigger, an action, and a result, but you have to, for this to work, to change these actions, you got to believe that you can't do it on your own, that you're unable to do it on your own, or you already would have. So what you have to understand is they've got to be something that's more powerful than you, a higher will, a God that is a God of everything. That's what we believe as Christians. And so they call it in Alcoholics Anonymous a higher power. But the point that I'm making is there's something that's more powerful than me that can help me. That's the second, that's the thing that you have to have with that three-way process of a trigger, actions, and results. You have to believe that there's a higher power that can help you, can instruct you, and guide you to do this to get this change to happen in your actions. And the second thing you need is you need people in your life. People in your life that will encourage you, that will help you, move along that way to help you be that person you're wanting to be, that when you're changing from this. Now, they've done mountains and mountains and mountains and tons and tons and tons of research on this. In fact, they were working with some people on their changing their habits, Mike. They were trying to work with them about how they're going to change, not change the triggers, but change their habits. You with me? Ricky looked at him like, boy, he picked on Mike, not me. You eating that orange. That's why I can't pick on you, man. You sitting there like, so here's what they did. They said, we want you to do they started out by doing a food log. They wanted not finances. They wanted to change people's habits with food. So they said, here's a daily log for the next 30 days. Write down everything that you eat, when you eat it, and write down what you're doing or what's happening when you decide to eat or when you're eating, and how you feel afterwards. So you document all the things that are leading up around why you're eating or whatever. I'm hungry, it's noon, I had a business day, whatever. And what they found was during that 30-day period, people with very bad eating disorders began to do things and improve in their eating habits before this research was done. Because when people started writing down what they were doing, why they were doing, and things in there, they're human beings and they got a brain, and they started seeing things and started figuring out things they had never seen before, even though they were in the habit of doing them all the time. Now, the research kept saying, well, okay, well, here's the thing. They took the documents. They said, okay, said, Mike, looks like here at 2 o'clock, you tend to eat a candy bar about 3 or 4 days a week at 2 o'clock. So what's happening? And they read all the stuff that he said about what he was feeling. And they found out his blood sugar was dropping. And his answer was to get it up with, he didn't know it. His body craved some, so he put a candy bar in there. They said, we want you to substitute an apple for the candy bar. They're making an action change, right? See, the blood sugar dropped. The results I wanted to be back where I was, I eat a candy bar to do that. It's convenience right there. Now I had to plan ahead. They put the apple there, and he ate the apple. And before you know it, they added a couple other changes in there, and he began to change, or the people began to change. They began to get better by putting disciplines in their life or putting actions, because they had a group of people encouraging them. They believed in the system, this higher power of this system that was around this that could change people's life, and they began to change their eating habits. But guess what happened? The researchers didn't expect this. The thing that happened was the people who were working on their eating habits began to go to the gym. They began to walk or to exercise, or they began to do other lifestyle changes. And the researchers were like, what's happening? They're working on this, and we know that they started out improving on their own because they figured things out, but now they're doing other things. They're transferring the disciplines and the things that they learned here, and they're putting in this area of the life. And we didn't tell them to. So they said, let's get another research. So they've done another research. And they said, we're going to do it on finances. So they took finances, had people write down their financial logs, what they spend, when they spend it, why they spend it, how did they feel. They went to the shopping. I felt a euphoric feeling when I bought a handbag. Never happened to me. I felt really good when I bought that pair of shoes. I know I didn't have the money, but I felt so good. You just don't know. Or here's one. It was on sale for half price. And I felt so much empowerment because I beat the system and I got a deal. And so they wrote down these things and they said, well, why don't we try to do this and do this? And they started making some changes. And lo and behold, they began to make changes in their own lifestyle actions when they started realizing what they were doing. And then when they coupled that in with the help of others and the instructions they were getting, they improved in their finances. They were able to give, and they were able to save, and they were able to give to the church or to give generously to others outside of the church. And a lifestyle of change happened. They changed habits that were ingrained in them. They never got rid of the triggers. The results were the same. They were happy. They changed their actions. And what they found out was that the people who were working on their finances, get this, they started adding these things and doing these similar things to their eating habits or to their exercise habits. In other words, when you work on one area of your life in setting disciplines, it will help you improve in other areas of your life. There's a crossover. It can't be trickled down because it's lateral. Because finances and health don't have anything to do. They're not stacked on top of each other. They're lateral. My relationship with my family or with my children or with my wife or my spouse has nothing to do with what I eat, but it does. My attitude toward work and toward how life is, my thinking about they're not stacked. One depend on the other. They're independent, but they're related. So if I improve in one area, then what would happen in the other? If I improved in my finances and got out of debt, got out of this bondage to slavery to debt, it also helps me improve my attitude at work, my attitude to others, my relationships. It helps me feel better about myself, and I might exercise or eat better and do things of that nature. All of those things are connected to what the research said. And they all begin with one day. What would it be like if that changed in my life? What would it be like if God would help me in this area of my life? What would one day look like? Now, there's a story in the scriptures that I'm going to tell you about today, and I'm going to set you up for this. It's found in Luke chapter 17. Now, in this story, it's about a sickness, a physical sickness, an illness that was terrible in that day and time and is still terrible today in parts of the country, especially in India. It's called leprosy. It's a disease that eats away at the body. And you go, well, preacher, understand how leprosy would have anything to do with the finances. Well, remember what that research said? If you can work in one area of your life, it can affect in others. What if you could learn from stories in the Bible about one area of people's life, physical things in their life, and it translates into your spiritual, relational, emotional, or financial areas of your life? So this story is about a group of guys that had leprosy, this terrible disease that ate away at the skin. It was thought to be at that time that was transferring by just touching or breathing or being in the air. Anybody ever seen Charlie Brown? And they had that one guy named Pigpen. Everybody remember Pigpen? There was always this cloud of dust around Pigpen wherever he walked. Does anybody remember that? And it's like, if you get in that cloud of dust, you ain't got to be with Pigpen. If you just get in that cloud of dust, you dirty. That's the way he thought leprosy was. And it would actually, the disease would eat and you'd lose your digits, you could lose your fingers, your toes, you could lose your arms. It was a terrible disease, and because they were so scared of it, they didn't know what to do. They separated people out from the culture of that time and put them in colonies to live by themselves. And they still do this in India. They're still outcast in India and other parts of the world today. And so they separated them out, and they had to live and be apart. They were considered unclean. You aren't like us. You're unclean. And your uncleanness can get off on me and make me unclean, so I don't want you around me. It was so bad they either had to wear bells on their outfit or ring bells to notify people that their leprosy had leprosy, or they had to shout out to give you time to move away. So if they're walking down the street, they'd have to shout out, unclean, unclean, I'm different, unclean, so that the clean people could move over and not get contaminated with them. This was happening in Jesus' day. Sometimes I feel like I'm unclean because of my debt. Sometimes I feel like I'm separated out from the rest of the world because I don't understand how everybody can do what they do and get done what they do and everything else, and they don't have debt. And I feel unclean. I feel separate. I feel different than them. I feel less than them. I feel like people look down their nose at me because I can't have the car that you have, and I can't have the dress that you have, and I can't have the shoes, and I want it, and I have a desire for it, but I can't. And it makes me feel less. And what it does is exactly what leprosy does. It robs me of my life, piece by piece, little by little, so I no longer I'm the man that I thought I was. And this is what was happening with this leprosy. So there was 10 of these guys. And Jesus was walking down the road, and I'm going to read this to you. And one day, they crossed paths. One day, Jesus crossed paths with this 10 guys. Listen to this story. While he was on his way to Jerusalem, that's Jesus, he was passing between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 leprous men who stood at a distance met him. And they raised their voice saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Now you get this? Just a little bit of the story right here. Jesus is walking, and they see him. He's across the road over there, across Fair Road. He's right across over there. You see how far that is? You can pick out somebody. I would know you, Drew, if I saw you across the street. You know, you're like 6'4". You sort of stick out. Now, I'm not saying Jesus is 6'4" and you look a lot like him, but there's somebody you would know. You got what I'm saying? They're yelling out, but they're not yelling out, unclean, unclean. They look across there and they talk. I think that's that Jesus we've been hearing about. I think that's that guy we heard about that's done some healing back over there. It's one of those other lepers over there. I think he helped some people over there. You think that's him? And they start yelling out, Jesus! Jesus, Master, have mercy on me. Jesus, 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 Master, have mercy on me. And that's what's happening. Here's the thing I want to tell you to start with. All healing, all habits that are going to be changed, all the change that's going to happen in your life has to come from that higher power. It's when you encounter that higher power that change starts. They encountered Jesus. Now let me explain this to you. I don't think they knew Jesus like I know Mike. He's worked on my cars. He's done stuff for me. He's helped me out. I know his kids. I know his grandkids. We know each other. I know his brother. You know, I know he's a great bowler. 11 perfect games this year, maybe 12. See, but see, I'm keeping up with him. So you see, it ain't like that. They just heard about him from a distance because they couldn't have got close to him. See, they didn't know Jesus, but they knew about him. See, if you want change in your life, it starts when you know about Jesus. It starts when you know about him. You ain't got to know everything about him. You don't have to know every story about him. You don't have to know the whole Bible. It starts when you encounter him and you encounter Jesus. The next one is when they called out. See, your change in your life is going to happen when you call out to Jesus and stop calling out to the credit card company and stop calling out to the bank and stop calling out to that, and you start calling out to Jesus. Jesus, Master, have mercy on me. Jesus, Master, have mercy on me. Now get this. Verse 14 says, when he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourself to the priest. And as they were going, they were cleansed. Did you get that? Y'all can see what I see, right? When he saw them, what does that next thing say? He said to them. He said to them. Alex, can I use you for a minute? Shout as loud as you can, Jesus, Master, have mercy on me. Shout as loud as you can. Don't be afraid, boy. Blast it out. You a drummer? Blast it out.
Jesus, Master, have mercy on me.
And this says, Go and show yourself to the priest. Now, if he's across the road and he shouts to get my attention, then how did they ever hear what he just said? If they're over there and he's over here. What happened, Jesus does something that he does in every one of our lives. Jesus, when you call on him, he closes the gap. And he moves toward you. And he says, go and show yourself to the priest. And he walks away. Jesus closes a gap. When you make the first step, when you call out to him, when you have an encounter with him, and you recognize it's him from a distance, and you shout out to him, I don't care how far you are from him or how far you think you are from him, he'll close the gap to come to you to tell you what to do next. He always has. He's still doing it, and he always will. He closes the gap. And I don't know if you caught this little piece that says, and as they were going, they were cleansed. Do you see that? And as they were going. There's something that happened. They got instructions, and God forbid, they did them. There's so many times we get instructions and we don't do anything with it. He walks and closes the gap, and he tells us what I want you to do. And it's right to us, and it's personal. And he tells us. And then we keep going. We don't stop. We don't turn. But this story right here says, as they were going, they were cleansed. They turned. Here, let me tell you a little bit of side stuff. Let me tell you a little bit of stuff. You ready for this? Chewy, you know this. Jose, you know this, right? Right? They went to the high priest. Why did he tell them to go to the high priest? Because in that culture, you know, Sable, you could tell Lindsay. You could say, Lindsay's got leprosy. And you start saying it, and you start spreading around that whole group over there. But your word don't mean that she has leprosy. You know whose word matters? The high priest. So to determine if Lindsay's clean or not, they would bring Lindsay to the high priest, and he would check her out. He says, yes, that is leprosy, and declare her unclean. The high priest, the church, determined who was clean and unclean. You got it? And guess who determines when they're clean? Same priest. She's healed. He comes to the priest and do that. See, this is the failure of the church today. I think the church today keeps wanting to tell people, you get yourself cleaned up, you get yourself together, then you come see us. We declared you unclean. You wear those tattoos. It's messy. You don't know what sex you are. You don't know what sex you love. You don't know this about this. You don't know all of this stuff. You can go to anything you want to. It's messy. You live together. You're not married. You do this. You do whatever you want to say. It's all of these things. And the church sits there and says, when you get that straight, you come to us and we'll declare you clean. I'm telling you now, that's not who we are. Amen? Amen? That is not the church we are. That is not how we are brought up, and that's not what we're teaching. We want you where you are, how you are. On that journey, we're going to be there with you. Because here's what we have found. And as they were going, they were cleansed. Healing happens on the journey toward cleansing. Healing happens when you turn and you move. And let me tell you what that looks like. Have mercy on me, Jesus. Master, have mercy on me. Go and show yourself to the priest. To the world, it looks like you're walking away from Jesus. And you're walking right where he told you to go. You with me? To the world, you're embracing what they say is unclean, and you're turning, you're walking right toward it. Doesn't mean you don't trust him. Doesn't mean you don't love him. It means you're heading and you're doing something that so many people struggle to do today, and that's be obedient to what Jesus tells them to do. And they started. And as they started, they were cleansed. They were healed. The leprosy. One day was here. One day that I've been waiting on. One day when this happens, what will I do? One day was here. One day turned into their day one of the first day of me being cleansed. Their one day turned into, this is the day one. This is my first day of being there. This is it. 9 of them, or 10 of them going. And one of them, listen to what it says. Verse 15. Now one of them, when he saw that he had been healed, he sees it, he recognizes it, turned back, glorifying God with a loud voice, and he come back and he fell at the feet, at Jesus' feet, giving thanks to him. And he was a Samaritan. He recognized God is doing something in me. On step 1, on step 2, on step 3, he's recognized this is it. I'm cleansed. 9 of them keep going where? Where were they going? Priest. Which priest? The high priest. They're going to the high priest, right? Because that's the one that declares you clean or unclean, right? The high priest does, right? He's the one. This guy goes, that's not the high priest. That guy I just walked from is the high priest. And he turned, and he come back, and he started giving thanks to the one that healed him. You're going to think that when you start getting better financially, it's because of what you did. You're going to think when your relationships get better and all this, you're going to think it's the little things. Well, Dorsey didn't buy tea, so I won't buy tea. That's going to do it. That's not it. It's the God of the tea, the God of the waiters, the God of the waitresses, the God of all that. It is Jesus Christ who makes changes in our life that makes the healing happen on our journey of life. And that's how you change the action from whatever the trigger is in your life to that result that you're looking for. So you got to recognize that healing's already started. Some of you, it started the day you come into this church for the first time. Some of you, it started when you started going to that Bible study for the first time. Some of you, it started when in your Bible, when you started praying, and your prayer life changed by you just saying, instead of just praying for me all the time, you started praying for somebody else that was on the prayer list and you didn't know. Your life started changing. Your healing began to change. Listen to what Jesus said then. Then Jesus said, were there not 10 cleansed? But the 9, where are they? Was no one found who returned to give glory to God except for this foreigner? See, he's confused. Jesus is like, well, I don't think he's confused. I think he knew exactly what was happening. Where's the 9? They're going to take credit for this themselves. They're going to do, where's the 9? They're healed physically. But listen to what he says. He turns to the guy and he said to him, stand up and go. Your faith has made you well. Well, what's that mean? But he was healed before that. Does that mean the 9 people who received the same cleansing are going to be, the healing's going to be taken away, the cleansing's going to be taken away? I don't think Jesus works like that. I think what this is saying is that crossover thing. You do this in this area of your life, guess what? I'm going to heal your soul. Your soul is what the struggle was. Your attitude and your outlook on life about who I am and what I do and how I can change this world, that's the problem. The 9 of them, they got the physical healing, but they ain't got the healing of the soul because they don't know where it came from. They're still trying to figure it out. And he said, it's coming from, and this guy turned around and he said, your faith in me has healed you. Not this. Not the skin. It's healed you. See, as many of us have been in church for years, and we keep going there, showing the pastors what we do, and this is what I've done, and there's still this aching and this hurt and this healing inside of us that we're lacking. And all we have to do is ask. All we have to do is encounter Jesus. All we have to do is listen to his instructions, make that turn, and make the first step, and it begins the journey of healing. Not just the physical part, not just the finances. You won't help in your finances. You won't help in your eating lifestyle or your exercise or your physical part of your life. You won't help in your relationships with others. You won't help in your job. It's going to start with encounter with Jesus. And let me tell you this. The writer of Thessalonians wrote this once. He said, rejoice always. Pray without ceasing. In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. See, rejoice always. You're going to have stuff happen in life. Rejoice. Pray without ceasing. On good days you pray. On bad days you pray. You rejoice. We rejoice because of who we are and who God is in us and what He's doing through us. The situations don't determine who we are, but the actions that we take do. And how we relate to things. See, some of us spend more time complaining than we do thanking God. One day I'll thank you, Lord, when you do this. What if today is day one of your one day? What if today you started thanking God for everything that you have gone through to this point and you thank Him for it? Not wish it away, you thank Him. We're about to take Holy Communion. And we're going to share this as our family's meal. This is what our family has done for years. The followers of Jesus, His family, have taken of this meal in some form or fashion to remind them of something. You hear of it as Holy Communion. You might hear of it as the Last Supper. What's some other things that you've ever heard of it? You may have ever heard anything else it's called? I eat. I don't know what that was. I eat sounds good. You ever heard of the Eucharist? You ever heard it called the Eucharist? Eucharist is a Greek word. You know what that word means? Thanksgiving. See, they knew it way back then when they started translating. This is about thanksgiving. Giving God praise and glory and thanks no matter where you are on your journey. Thankful that you have encountered Jesus, wherever that encounter is, that it's from a distance, that He closed a gap. Thankful that He was willing to close that gap, to talk to you. Thankful that you had the courage to ask for help. Thankful that it wasn't about the situation, that how you've worked in me. Thankful that you gave me instructions. Thankful that I turned. Thankful that I took the steps. Thankful that I saw the healing. Thankful that once I saw the healing, I recognized it's you, Jesus, who did it. Thankful that I had the courage to come back. Thankful that I dropped to my knees and gave Him thanks and praise and glory. And thankful that He began to heal my soul. Because healing starts on the journey. The journey of life. When we begin with the great thanksgiving. Being thankful to God.